this morning, exactly the same as yesterday. We vote, as you know, and then 10 to 15 minutes for questions for this lecture first, and then also for the people who are with CILE, we have exactly the same, try to get did you get the evaluation already?
Yes.
So please put as much as you can for us to evaluate the right way. So the El-Shinqiti, you know the title, okay?
He's like, I don't know what to say for. I'm kidding. This is talking about something.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So the topic is reviving the Islamic ethical values, the meaning of Sharia in a free society. In appearance, looks like two separate topics, but in reality there are only one, as we might see when we move with the presentation. I started with this quotation, one from Al-Izzat Begovic. In order for religion to impact the world, needs to be worldly. Or if we read it in the Arabic translation of this book, لكي يؤثر الدين للدنيا تحتاج أن يكون الدنيويا. Also, second quotation from Smith, it's talking about Prophet Mohammed, peace be upon him. He said he was Caesar and Pope in one. But he was Pope without Pope's pretensions, Caesar without legions of Caesar. Muhammad Iqbal, in his Jawid Nama, so it is from the east that the sun rises. It burns and blazes with inward fire only when it escapes from the shackles of east and west. The essence of this quotation is what I talk about as the Islamic synthesis. Muhammad Iqbal, in his book, Reconstruction of Religious Thought in Islam, the beginning of the 5th chapter, started quotation this Afghan Sufi poet who said, Muhammad of Arabia ascended the highest heaven and returned. I swear by God that if I had reached that point, I should never have returned. This kind of religious conception is the essence of what we call mysticism or tasawwuf. Tasawwuf or mysticism is about salvation of the individual. It's not about the social order or the political order. But as Muhammad Iqbal explained in his comments on these verses of poetry, this doesn't reflect the essence of Islam. Islam is not only about salvation of the individual. And this is a part of comments of Iqbal. First, he is explaining that this expression is the best illustration of the psychological difference between the prophetic and the mystic types of consciousness. The mystic type of consciousness is about salvation of the individual, absorption or annihilation, self-annihilation, or complete self-negation. But the prophetic type of consciousness, as Iqbal explained, especially in the Islamic context, is much more than that. He said the mystic does not wish to return from the repose of unitary experience. And even when he does return, as he must, his return does not mean much for mankind at large. So for this Sufi Abdul Quddus, if he stayed in heaven, no problem. We have no problem. Humanity might not need him. But for Prophet Muhammad, humanity, prophets are needed. They are not about individual salvation. It's about salvation of the whole humanity. And that is the Islamic synthesis. It's working on oneself, but also working for others. The Prophet's return, Iqbal said, is creative. He returns to insert himself into the sweep of time with a view to control the forces of history. So this extraordinary spiritual experience that we call in Islamic tradition al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, whether it's a spiritual vision or physical journey, the significance of it, it's a huge spiritual transformation, but it's not for the person of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is for all humanity. It is a spiritual energy that needs to be transformed or translated on earth, as we'll see when we talk about the cycle of religion. Here we need some sort of an Islamic theory of religion. In the philosophy of religion today, they said that the minimum components of a religion are 3 components: faith, ritual, and a cosmic story. A story that explains the origin of this universe and the future, where we come from and where we are heading. These existential questions about the meaning of the human life. Every religion must have faith, must have ritual, must have a story, a grand narrative, if we use today's terminology, to explain or to answer this existential question that the famous Lebanese poet Ilya Abu Mali asked in his long poem, جئت لا أعرف من أين ولكني أتيت ولقد أبصرت قدامي طريقا فمشيت, etc. No translation. This is for my friend Ray, it's not for people, because he has connection with Lebanon. The poem the title is Talisman of Talasim in Arabic. And he's just talking about these questions of, he said, well, I came here, but I don't know from where. I'm moving, but I don't know to where. جئت لا أعرف من أين ولكني all what I know that I'm here. I came here. So this kind of question is very important as a part of any religion. But Islam is much more than these 3 elementary components of religion. Islam contains, in addition to the 3 basic elements of religion, contains laws, and political, social, and economic values. The secularist, to me, commits serious mistakes in comparing Islam with other religions who have only the basic element of what we call religious phenomena. For example, in Christianity, and I have very deep respect for Christians and Christianity, but Christianity doesn't have laws. Jesus, peace be upon him, did not bring laws. Christianity was born within a structure of an empire, the Roman Empire. And pre-modern European societies were ruled by Roman laws till the modern time. Because there is no Christian law. The gospel provides faith, rituals, cosmic story, morality, but not laws. But the secularists in Muslim countries, they used to do some analogy, and they said, let's get rid of these religious laws the way Europe did. Europe did not get rid of religious laws because they never had religious laws in the first place. So I'm talking out of the wrong person. How is it?
Use the display key.
Okay. In philosophy of religion also we talk about something I call religious cycle. And basically there are 4 stages of this religious cycle. First stage, religion is born a moral and a humanistic spirit. That first stage. Second stage, the spirit gives fruits in the form of institutions, laws, art, science. For example, when Iqra was revealed to Prophet Muhammad, he was one man in a cave in a desert. He got the spirit, only that 5 verses of Quran. But after 70 years, 80 years, 100 years, you see this spirit, a huge empire with armies, institutions, laws, literature. That is the second stage. The third stage, these fruits become a burden on the initial spirit. These institutions that were born to serve this religious spirit become a burden with time on the spirit. And then you come to the fourth stage, which is the need for a religious revival, a new religious revival. Through a new religion or through a new interpretation of the existing religion. In the Islamic context, because we believe that Prophet Muhammad is the seal of prophets, Islam is the last message from God, we don't expect any new religion. But there must be a constant revival and reinterpretation, and what our Sheikh Dr. Tariq called creative ijtihad. We have to have that all the time, because we are not expecting a prophet to come to drive. And this is probably the meaning of one of the hadith of the Prophet that said, كان بنو إسرائيل تسوسهم الأنبياء كلما هلك نبي جاء نبي وإنه لا نبي بعدي. And this is authentic hadith, said that people of Israelites, people of Israel used to be governed by prophets. Whenever a prophet died, a new one came. But there is no prophet after me, what Muhammad said. Means it's your business from now. There is no prophet who will come to lead you. You need to lead yourself. And this is the foundation of political legitimacy in Islam, that people are delegated to rule their own affairs. There is no prophet who will lead you guys. So take care of yourself. And this is what Muhammad Iqbal also said, that the end of revelation is a declaration of the maturity of humanity. To have the last message from God means, you guys are adults, take care of yourself. And this is very important. I think Islamic culture need to appreciate this idea of Iqbal, need to be given more attention. Okay, the revival that we need require to have some understanding of the sacred text. The key issues in scriptural cultures or cultures centered around sacred text is to separate the eternal from the temporal. What the prophet did as a prophet, what he did as a political leader, what he did as a judge, what he did or said as a mufti, what he did or said as a normal human being who was living in Arabia in the 7th century. Not all of this is eternal. Some of this is temporal, some is eternal. So to separate the two elements is the key to move ahead. If we cannot separate them, like this symptom you see it in the Salafi school of thought today, they are not able to separate history from revelation. Revelation usually produces 3 kinds of school of thought, 3 kinds of interpretations. a school of thought that is too close to the text. And that's what we call in Islamic terminology, Zahiriya sometimes, or Salafiyya, literalist. What is their problem? They are too close to the text. And then you have a school of thought that is too far from the text. These are abstractors. These are, for example, Al-Mu'tazila or Al-Batiniyya in Islamic history. They went too far from the text. And then you have a third school of thought that is in the middle between the two. This is usually you have in any culture that is centered around sacred text. Okay, now let's go to politics. In politics, you have a Pharaonic model and you have the Islamic model. The Pharaonic model is just a pyramid, like the Egyptian pyramid. So you have a pharaoh at the top of the pyramid. You have some political elite serving the pharaoh. Haman, that is symbol of it is Haman in Quran. You have some financial mafia serving the dictator. Symbol of that in Quran is Qarun. And then you have their hard power, army, intelligence, security forces, junudahuma in Quran, their armies, Quran called their armies. And you have also another force that legitimizes for the dictator his role and what he's doing. And this is the role of the magicians in this pyramid. Today is the role of some fuqaha, some journalists, who are just selling themselves to the dictator. This is a very old role. This is the role of the magician in old Egypt. And then you have these submissive people at the end. This is the Pharaonic political model. Well, Islam provided values, these are the called political values, that are anti-pyramidal values. These are 11 values. I think they are the key, the core political values of Islam. Number one is justice. Al-Qist in Islamic terminology. Quran is teaching us that the goal of all revelations, all messages, all messengers is to establish justice. لقد أرسلنا رسلنا بالبينات وأنزلنا معهم الكتاب والميزان ليقوم الناس بالقسط. You have freedom, that's actually the essence of responsibility. You have legitimacy, which is my translation for shura. Shura is political legitimacy, just simply means people should have the right to elect or select a leader. And you have mushawara, which is different than shura, which means collective decision. It's not enough to be elected. You still need to share with people decision making. And we have an ijma, which is today a legal jurisprudential concept, but originally it was political concept. It was not ijma of scholar, consensus of scholar. That's a new terminology. Ijma in the hadith, in the original text, it means just the majority of people. And it has nothing to do with legal issues. And we have a manner that the public office is a trust. It's not personal ownership. And al-quwa, which is the Islamic concept for competence. So when Muslim scholars talk about the qualification of political leader, they said al-amana wal-quwa. Al-amana means it's the ethical part. Al-quwa is the technical part or competence. And we have obedience, the right for the legitimate ruler to be obeyed. Because anarchism is a big issue, especially in Arabia for Islam, where you have no tradition of state. And one of the biggest challenges Islam faced at the beginning was this Arabian anarchism. And we have the concept of malullah, ownership of God. Public wealth is called in Islamic terminology malullah, wealth of God, which is very interesting because this is very serious matter. Don't play with this. It's not personal property. It's property of God. Should be used only based on these principles and not based on personal taste. And there is equality before law, which is in Islamic terminology الرد إلى الله والرسول. In Surah An-Nisa we read وما اختلفتم به من شيء فردوه إلى الله والرسول. Whenever difference arises between you, just take back to Allah and His Messenger. Means take back to the law of God. There must be a third, neutral, honest judge. And there is a concept, very important concept of mudafa'a that I've been looking for translation for mudafa'a for some times. And until I found in the American constitutional terminology actually the best term for translation of mudafa'a, which is checks and balances. Mudafa'a simply means that you need to distribute power and wealth and make everyone has a chair, so everyone has a share, so everyone can stop the other. The legislation is in the hand of a group of people, executive in the hand of others, judiciary in the hand of others. This idea of Montesquieu separation of powers. This is the concept of mudafa'a. And Quran is teaching us without mudafa'a there will be corruption on earth. The only thing that protects from corruption, it's not the piety of the personal piety of the leader, as some Muslims think today. No. The personal piety of the leader is irrelevant here. What is important is you have these checks and balances. You have these powers separated, distributed, everyone can stop the other. And that's exactly what Quran said. وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ لَفَسَدَتِ الْأَرْضِ. Without these mudafa'a, people against people, corruption will spread over the earth. These values, when they came first, they faced two challenges. The monarchism of Persia and Byzantium, and the anarchism of Arabia. So Islam political value face problem inside Arabia, which is the anarchism. People have no tradition of state at all, or system, or obedience of rulers. And they used to be proud to be anarchists actually in Arabia. The tribe of Quraysh, tribe of Prophet, they used to pride themselves by saying, نحن قبيلة لقاح لا ملك لنا. We are free tribe, we have no king. So they pride themselves that. The poet, pre-Islamic poet Amr ibn Kulthum said in his famous poem معلقة إذا بلغ الفطام لنا صبي يخر له الجبابر ساجدين. That the kings and tyrants have to bow down in prostration to our babies. Means at this time when many nations were making sujood for their kings, the Arabs want the king to make sujood for their children. And people of Arabia, pre-Islamic Arabia, were an army without mission. They love to fight. For anything, for any reason, without reason. If they find the enemy, they fight. If they don't find the enemy, they fight their brothers. And they said it in their poetry. He said, وَأَحْيَانًا عَلَى بَكْرٍ أَخِينَا إِذَا مَا لَمْ نَجِدْ إِلَّا أَخَّانَ. Sometimes we attack our brothers, Bakr, if we don't find any person to attack or any group to attack. So they love to fight. But it was an army without mission. What Islam did actually is, it gave this army a mission. And that's what explained this speed and efficiency of Islamic conquest. This was already army, it doesn't need a mission. Give it a mission, vision, and let's move. That's what happened. Al-Tirimah, another poet, وإني لمرتاد بجوادي فقاذف به وبنفسي اليوم إحدى المقاذف. It's hard to translate. I will try. He said, I'm going to ride my horse today and I will jump on the back of my horse and then I will throw myself and himself somewhere. He doesn't know where to attack, but he decided to attack. Again, it's an army without mission. So, but this is a very anarchist situation, that if you want to build a state with rule of law, with obedience to the legitimate authority, it's very hard to build it in that place. The Arabs did not have this bureaucratic tradition the Persian had at that time, and the Byzantine had, and the Chinese, and the Abyssinian, and the other nations. And that was a big challenge. The other challenge is the monarchism around Arabia. Actually, it was a global culture at that time, monarchism. If you want to build a state based on these values that we said, that means you are against the spirit of that time. You are against the trend of the global culture at that time. That's why I used to say that the essence of the crisis of Islamic civilization was always a constitutional crisis. Every civilization has its problem. The problem of Islamic civilization, in my view, was a constitutional one from day one. From the night the Prophet died, the constitutional problem started, the problem of political legitimacy. No issue divided Muslims, and still divide them today, more than this issue of political legitimacy. Even this deepest divide in Islam between Sunni and Shia, it's simply a symptom of this political legitimacy problem. Because the division between Sunni and Shia started political before it was transformed into theological problem. At the beginning, it was simply political. Actually, in the two or three first centuries of Islam, it was simply a political issue. It was not theological at all. It started to be theological only in the 10th century or 4th century of Hijrah. I explained this in detail in my dissertation at Texas Tech University. It's titled "The Crusades' Impact on Sunni-Shia Relations." That the whole issue was the constitutional crisis in Islamic civilization. This was noticed by some Muslim scholars and historians. For example, al-Baghdadi, in his famous book on Islamic sects, Al-Farq Bayn al-Firaq, he said, ما سل سيف بالإسلام على قاعدة دينية مثل ما سل على قاعدة الإمامة. Never the sword was used in Islamic history over any topic more than the topic of Imam or leadership. Muslims did not fight between themselves over any issue more than this issue of leadership. And that's why we have a bloody legacy of power transition in Islamic history. If you look at how all of the kings of Umayyad Empire, for example, Abbasid Empire, Ottoman Empire, just look at their biography, see how they died. You will find the majority were killed. They didn't die natural death. We have a bloody history of this power transition. It was always complicated in Islamic history. Now, that's why the Islamic synthesis that we talk about collapsed. Why this Islamic synthesis that tried to combine the temporal and the spiritual, the religious and the political, and that the Prophet Muhammad himself was the best example of this synthesis. Why this synthesis collapsed? We have two explanations. Why by Muhammad Iqbal, one by Malik Banna. Muhammad Iqbal, in his famous letter to the British Orientalist in Colson, this is what he wrote. He said, I consider it a great loss that the progress of Islam as a conquering faith stultify the growth of those germs of an economic and democratic organization of society, which I find scattered up and down the pages of Quran and the tradition of the Prophet. No doubt, Muslims succeeded in building great empire, but thereby they largely repaganized their political ideals and lost sight of some of the most important potentialities of their faith. Muhammad Iqbal believed that those fast, effective, lasting Islamic conquest that Muslims are very proud of actually were because of the collapse of the Islamic political values. Means what Muslims gain in expansion, they lost it inside. So it's a structural explanation of what happened. Yes, you built empire, but you lost Khilaf al-Rashid. You lost a political system that is based on your values. And I think actually if we put the Islamic history in the context of global history, this is not only an Islamic phenomenon. When you see Rome, that was a small republic, city-state, and then when it became an empire, democracy collapsed in Rome. In Greece, same, those city-states that were democratic also collapsed when Greece became an empire. The same thing happened in Islamic history. So you cannot have a democratic empire. That's simple. Whether you have a democratic state or you have an empire, you cannot have both at the same time. And Muslims decided to have an empire like anybody else at the time. Probably they don't have a choice because they lived in a world of a war of all against all, like the idea of Hobbes, war of all against all. So if you are living in that kind of environment, you are tempted to build an empire instead of a free state. Malik bin Nabi has a very interesting explanation, but different from Muhammad Iqbal. I'm quoting him here in French because it's in his book, Focus on l'Islam. Il importe en premier lieu de prendre conscience des causes lointaines qui ont déterminé sa décadence. Al-Banabi is trying to explain these deep long-term causes of the decline of Islamic civilization. So he said, le monde musulman connaît sa première rupture. And Dr. Tariq need to excuse me for my French pronunciation. Le monde musulman connaît sa première rupture à la bataille de Siffin en l'an 37. I was about to say 37. Parce qu'il contenait déjà, si peu de temps après sa naissance, une contradiction interne. L'esprit jahilien en lutte avec l'esprit coranique. Ce fut d'ailleurs un demi-converti Muawiyah qui brisa une synthèse. Un principe établi pour longtemps, peut-être pour toujours, grâce à l'équilibre entre le spirituel et le temporel. So, what he's saying basically that the Islamic synthesis collapsed because of there is a clash between two worldviews, what he called Quranic spirit and the Jahili spirit, or pre-Islamic norms, social and political norms, in clash with these Islamic political and social norms. And he put the blame on Muawiyah because he's one who led the transformation of Islamic state from Khilaf al-Rashida to monarchy. Again, he came back to this in his book, again and again. C'est ce retard qui fit dans le monde musulman la cause de la rupture de Siffin. Le Coran en tant que système philosophique était une science qui dépassait singulièrement l'horizon de la conscience jahiliya. There is a great gap between the Islamic conception of or political values with the level of culture of Arabia at the time. And so this rupture was natural for Manhajiya because the gap is too big at the time. Probably humanity needed more maturity to be able to reach the level of these values. And that's why he called Islamic civilization déviée. Well, of course, some Muslims who are proud of their history don't like their civilization to be called Hadara Munharifa, or that to put the finger on this deviation that started in the early time, those early days. But that is a fact. And Manhajiya is proud of this civilization, of course. And he said that it was the Islamic civilization, as you can read, and I suppose many of you can read it in French better than I do, that it was this civilization that actually built the foundation of what he called la pensée technique, or the scientific, modern scientific thought anyway. But that is not enough if you judge it based on the values of Quran. And when you do that, you probably will agree with Manhajiya when he said, toute cette brillante civilisation n'était qu'une dénaturation de la synthèse originale réalisée par le Coran. So you have the ideal and you have the reality. Islamic civilization, with all its greatness in history, was actually far from those values, far from the level, the potential. Here we can use the German philosopher Hegel, his theory of philosophy of history, when he said that every civilization is born with potential. Some of it is actualized, some will not be actualized, because the context is pressing. So when Islamic civilization was born, it was born with the potential. But a part of that potential was not actualized, specifically in the political aspect. And I think this is really the mortal, or not the mortal, yeah, I got confused. The deadly part here in Islamic experience is this political, the real weakness in Islamic civilization. Okay, here is the conflict between the two views as exemplified in Arabic poetry. I'll do my best for translation. Rishad Mubord expressed the Islamic spirit and political values in two verses of poetry. Sa'd ibn Nashib, another poet, expressed the Jahili political philosophy in two verses of poetry. This is what Bashar said: إذا بلغ الأمر المشورة فاستعن برأي نصيح أو مشورة حازم ولا تحسب الشورى عليك غضاضة فإن الخوافي قوة للقوادم. He's just urging the rulers to listen to subjects, his citizens, listen to them, to their opinion, not to be self-sufficient, self-centered, what he can do and what he can decide on behalf of people, and to look at shura and mushawara as something positive. Doesn't mean that it's a shortcoming in him. Everybody needs that. While the Sa'd ibn Nashib is more interesting and more aggressive in his two verses of poetry. إذا هم ألقى بين عينيه عزمه ونكب عن ذكر العواقب جانبا ولم يستشر في أمره غير نفسه ولم يرضى إلا قائم السيف صاحبه. He said, he's talking about himself. He's proud that when he decides something, he just do it. He's determined. He doesn't need to think about it. He put the consequences aside. He doesn't think about consequences. نكب عن ذكر العواقب جانبا ولم يستشر بأمره غير نفسه. He doesn't consult anybody on about what he wants to do. وَلَمْ يَرْضَى إِلَّا قَائِمَ السَّيْفَ صَاحِبًا, and he takes his sword as his best companion. It's basically the logic of power or might is right. That is the logic of this. This is what Biomedical called Quranic spirit versus Jahili spirit. So why the potential of these political values was never actualized if we use the terminology of Hegel? There are several factors. Number one, the resilience of the Arabian tribal legacy, what we called before the Arabian anarchism, and also tribalism. And that's why in the Sunni tradition they said the caliph must be from Quraysh. Actually, this is just the influence of the pre-Islamic tribal culture. And they misinterpreted some hadith of the Prophet to justify this tribal inclination. Another problem is the burden of the Sassanid political tradition. No pre-Islamic tradition impacted Islamic political thought more than the Sassanid Persian tradition. And one of the reasons for that is that Baghdad was the capital on the borders between Arabia and Persia. So it's been the capital for most of the, at least the centuries of intercultural interaction between those people. And there is a third problem, which is the structural weaknesses of the early Islamic states. The state Prophet Muhammad built, and the four rightly guided caliph, Khulafa Rashidin, was a great state in terms of values and principles, but it was very weak in terms of structure. It has no standing army, it has no police, it has no bureaucracy, it has no palaces. So state cannot continue surviving with this, of course. These weaknesses, because in Arabia there is no tradition of state before Islam. Islam basically started from scratch to build state. So it was very weak structurally. It was great in principles and values, but very weak structurally. And that's one of the causes of this collapse. And the imperial spirit of the time. As we said before, global culture was imperial. It's about empire. And when we build city-state, whether in Rome or in Athens or in Medina, you are basically going against the spirit of that time. Okay, today we have this legacy of the Islamic synthesis and values. We have this legacy of the collapse of these synthesis and values in Muslim life. And this legacy is pressing us hard today. And that's when ideals become burden. Here I want to go to one of the historians of early modern Europe. The Dutch historian Huizinga, one of my favorite historians, in his book, The Autumn of the Middle Ages, he has a very interesting theory. The book is describing this phenomenon of dying, what he called dying and rigidifying of previously valid store of thought. Ideals that were one day inspiring, and they become burden on same people they were inspiring before. He's talking about Europe in the 14th and the 15th centuries. He said that the cultural forms and norms on which medieval Europe was based became overused and exhausted. And that's when the Renaissance started. Because those ideals are no more able to guide people. They become burden on people. And when the ideal becomes exhausted, it fails to be a source of inspiration. Rather, it becomes an artificial burden. And I think this is true of much of what we call Turad al-Islami today, or Islamic cultural legacy today. When I read the books of Mawardi or Juwayni or Ibn Taymiyyah or all of those great Muslim jurists and thinkers who wrote about politics. What they are talking about is basically not a source of inspiration to me today. It's more a burden. Because they will tell you, woman has no right to any say on choosing the leader of the community. Non-Muslims have no right for that. General public have no right in that. This is a word of Juwayni, one of the greatest Muslim scholars. لا شأن للنسوة لاختيار الإمام وليس للعوام الذين هم ليسوا من أهل العلم والأحلام ولا مدخل لأهل الذمة اختيار الأئمة. So let's see, we want to build an Islamic state today. Women are not allowed to vote. Non-Muslims are not allowed to vote. The public, what he called al-awam, is not allowed to vote. So who has the right to vote in this case? This is a burden. This is not an inspiration. It's not a source of inspiration. And Muslims who have taken this kind of fiqh or political jurisprudence as a source of inspiration, they're just deceiving themselves. This is not source of inspiration. If you want inspiration, go back to the origin. Go back to the Islamic political values as you find them in Quran and in Sunnah. Not the Abbasid culture or Ottoman culture. So what I try to do, or trying to say that thesis of Johann Huizinga can be extended to explain the transitional moment of the contemporary Islamic culture. I think our cultural norm and form are exhausted today, and we need to work hard to have new norm and form based on original revelation and human and social sciences today. The cultural legacy modern Muslims inherited from their ancestors is exhausted. With lack of self-criticism, much of this legacy is becoming a burden rather than a healthy source of inspiration. And this is true for our political tradition more than any aspect of our cultural legacy. Because our cultural tradition actually was adapted to the logic of the empire. It's a culture of an empire, it's not a culture of a state. This is what I call al-fiqh al-imperatori, the imperial jurisprudence. Al-fiqh al-imperatori cannot be good for a state. We need fiqh al-dawla, not fiqh al-imperatori. Okay. Finally, I come to Sharia. How much time I have for Sharia? Sharia this time. Okay, let me think about it and talk while I talk. Okay, let's say briefly, we have two schools of thoughts on the issue of Sharia today. A select school of thought that perceived freedom as a threat to Sharia, and a secular school of thought that perceived Sharia as a threat to freedom. We are in big trouble, right? We have a group of people who see Sharia as a threat to freedom. And we have a group of people who see freedom as a threat to Sharia. We're in big trouble. Why this happened? Because the Salafists made history a part of religion. All of these legacy, cultural legacy of Islam, of Muslims, they make it part of Islam. Implicitly, for them, it's part of Islam. It's part of the authority. Secularists, the opposite. They made religion as a whole, including revelation, as just a part of history. Just a man-made text that we can't get out of it. So, treat Quran like any classical text for example. Well, both ways are not right for me as a Muslim, and are not also practical in the context of Muslim societies today. We need a third alternative that better reflects the Islamic synthesis that I talk about. How to have that kind of third alternative? Number one, we need to understand Sharia in its Quranic sense, its meaning. The only instance of the use of the word Sharia in Quran was in one verse, and that is Surah 45, verse 18. Sharia with this term, this word, was used in Quran only one time. ثم جعلناك على شريعة من الأمر فاتبعها ولا تتبع أهواء الذين لا يعلمون. Translation, then we put you on the right way of religion. So follow thou that way and follow not the desires of those who know not. So Sharia, the original meaning of Sharia in Quran is religion. Al-Tabari, which is the earliest tafsir we have, was called the father of tafsir. In what he said in his tafsir of this verse, he said, الشريعة الدين. الشريعة الدين. Sharia is religion. Sharia means religion. So the original meaning of Sharia means Islam. Faith, worship, values, laws, all of this is part of Sharia. And even in the first centuries, we find Muslim scholars using Sharia in this sense, this comprehensive sense. For example, Kitab al-Sharia, there is a book titled Kitab al-Sharia, the Book of Sharia, written by Al-Ajurri, who died 360 Hijrah. And it's a book of theology. It has nothing to do with Sharia as we understand it today, as laws. And we have the book of Al-Asfahani, Al-Dhari'a ila Makarim al-Sharia. Al-Asfahani died 400 Hijrah, end of the 10th century. And this is a book of ethics. It has nothing to do with Sharia as we understand it today. It means laws and ahkam. Okay. What we need then, first step is we need to go back to the Sharia in the Quranic meaning, in the comprehensive meaning that comprehends all religion. The second question, is Sharia frozen in Muslim societies today, as many Muslims said, is Sharia mu'attala? No, it's not. Most of Sharia is not actually. At least if we understand Sharia in this Quranic use, in Islam. Ritual, sha'air are not. Social life is not. Muslims probably are praying in mosque today more than 100 years ago. Maybe in some villages, women who have hijab today are more than when they have 100 years ago, including Saudi Arabia. The villages. When Mohammed said what he spoke the road to Makkah, he talked about women who have no hijab in Saudi Arabia. Villages at that time. It was the early 20th century. And it was very normal. And he came to a group of women, and they were on a well, drawing water, and they gave him water to drink. And he described, he said, well, it's just. So, what is not practice of Sharia today are basically two aspects. One, which is to me the most important part, is the political values that we talk about. These values are more important than any legal details. And Muslims are the ones who froze these values, not European colonialism. Muslims like to blame European colonialism for freezing Sharia. No, we froze Sharia 1300 years ago because we start practicing the Islamic political values. And those values are more important than penal code, they are more important than commercial code, they are more important than family code. Because they are very important values in Islam. The other aspect that is frozen is some aspect of Islamic laws, especially the penal law and commercial law, that was frozen by the European colonization in the modern time. The reactive mode that Muslims are in today is making them more attached to these details that was frozen by Europeans more than those core values that were frozen by Muslims themselves a long time ago. So I think we need to rethink about the whole issue. We need to set our priorities right. The other issue is that we need more pragmatic definition of Islamic law. And Islamic law doesn't have to be derived directly from Islamic sacred text. Any law that serves the community and does not contradict the sacred, does not. This is a mistake here. I mean, does not. So you need to see it in capital letters. After all, I'm a conservative Muslim. Okay, what happened to my computer?
F5.
What is it?
The button F5.
F5.
Right.
It's at the top.
F4?
Is that
Oh, sorry.
What is F5? Oh, look. He's right.
Oh, it's fine.
I think people memorize the Quran. He makes lots of presentations.
Okay.
He makes lots of presentations.
So, any law that serves the community and does not contradict sacred text is an Islamic law. So, some Islamists will tell you today, no, Islamic law is we have to take from Quran and Sunnah. No, I said no. Yes, we have to take law from Quran and Sunnah, but doesn't mean that all laws must be taken from Quran and Sunnah. Any law that serves the community and does not contradict Quran and Sunnah is an Islamic law. So what we need today is not to codify Islamic jurisprudence, what we call taqneen al-fiqh. No, we need to Islamize the positivist law. That is one of my shuyukh in Mauritania, very great scholar and judge. He used to say, ما نحتاج إليه اليوم ليس تقنين الفقه بل تفقيه القانون. What we need today is not codification of fiqh. What we need is to make this law, the existing laws, whether French laws or American laws or Swiss, we make them Islamic by giving them the Islamic ethical justification, Islamic ethical legitimization. Some people will say, well, this is just adaptation to, yeah, why not? Islam is very practical, it's adapted to many cultures. It's not against culture. People convert to Islam many nations and they keep much of their culture. Doesn't mean Islam, it's not a separation from the rest of the humanity or a separation from other culture and civilization, no. Actually, the vitality of Islam is this adaptation and this ability to interact with other cultures. Also, the multiplicity of the sources of law is acceptable in Islam, which is something very sensitive in the mind of many Islamists today. Will say, no, Islam هو المصدر الوحيد للتشريع. Islam must be the only source of law. No, that was not the case in the time of Prophet. It was never the case in Islamic history, and will never be the case. Even in the time of Prophet, there were some tribal traditions and customs that were incorporated within Sharia. And we know that in the Charter of Medina, for example. And then we need to distinguish between morality and legality. Sharia contains both moral laws and legal laws. Moral laws include all matters of belief, worship, personal life that doesn't harm others. And that's what we call huququllah. Legal laws of Sharia include all transactional affairs and any behavior that harm others, huquq al-ibad. The moral aspect of Sharia is about 9%, and it's much broader than the legal aspect of Sharia. And there are 3 layers of responsibility. I have to move very quickly. Sharia is based on 3 layers of responsibility: the consciousness of the individual, the pressure of the society, and the power of the state. This order is very important because anything you can achieve through the individual, on the individual level, you should not use the social pressure for. Anything you can achieve through social pressure, you should not use the power of the state for. It's very important because, again, this is a moral message more than a legal message. And this is what guarantees 2 things. First is sincerity of religion, and second is freedom of people. Dr. Tariq Ramadan is stopping me. I'm going to stop it here, and I will keep 2 or 3 slides for the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are already behind our schedule, but if you have 1 or 2 direct questions, and then but even if you do the whole hour, but that's fine. If you have,
Can you continue the lecture and then keep the questions to the end?
to this afternoon.
Yeah.
So how much time did? Because I don't know if I give him the time now, he will take half an hour. So your break could be lost.
5 to 10 maximum.
No, 5 and 10. Because so go for 5. Okay, try to summarize what you have to say.
Okay, Bismillah. We start over. Okay. On Sharia issue, there is a very important issue, unfortunate one, which is dictatorship, misuse of religion and Sharia. The dictators in the Islamic world need to give lip service to Sharia, of course, and to religion. And this is part of it is compensation for the lack of political legitimacy and also building political allies from among the religious establishment and whitewashing their crimes, in the eyes of the ignorant masses. But actually, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, denounced this kind of use of Sharia when Muslim leader is neglecting his responsibility and doing what is not his responsibility. So our leaders today, for example, they don't establish justice, they don't protect freedom of people, but they claim to be protector of faith and they want to put hijab on this, they want to put, well, they are violating the basic human right, putting people in jail, killing people without any reason. So the Prophet ﷺ in a very strong hadith said, سيكون أمراء من بعدي يقولون ما لا يفعلون ويفعلون ما لا يؤمرون. There will be some political leaders after me who say what they don't do. Basically, they are hypocritical. And they do what they are not asked to do. So, Mutawwa will come to you and tell you, close your shop and you have to go to do salat. And he's taking salary from government. Or he will impose on you to claim that you are fasting in Ramadan while you are not fasting. So why should I be a hypocrite and claim to be fasting while I'm not fasting? And the state is doing this, but it's not the responsibility of state. This is an individual issue. The last question is, who is in charge of Sharia? All Islam teaching in public affairs, by the way, when you look at them in Quran, are addressed to the society, not to the rulers. You find always the imperative in plural form. Do, but in plural form in Quran. The society is in charge of interpreting the sacred text, on contextualizing with the help of the experts. Muslim scholars, fuqaha, as experts, are to advise and orient society, but not to dictate or enforce. They have no political legitimacy. There is no wali al-faqih in Islam. To be a Muslim scholar doesn't mean you have political legitimacy to be a political leader. People will choose the leader whether he is a scholar or not. And political rulers are mere delegate of the society to implement its value system and preferences. Oh my God. Okay. Okay, let me say last word about democracy. There is a lot of debate about democracy in the Islamic world. Democracy in relation to this issue of application of Sharia, to me, is just very simple. Democracy is the application of the constitutional aspect of Sharia. It's not application of the legal aspect of Sharia, but it is application of the constitutional aspect of Sharia. And this aspect of Sharia was betrayed in Islamic history more than any other aspect. And it is very important, actually more important than legal aspect. Islamists are calling for application of Sharia in the legal sense. I'm actually calling for application of Sharia in the constitutional sense first, not the detail. And when we do that, when we have constitution, then we need to think about the laws after that. So calling for applying laws for the values from which these laws are derived is putting the cart, not the right spelling, in the front of the horse. And that is exactly what some Islamists are doing. They're just putting the cart in the front of the horse. Thank you very much. If I don't stop, I will have a problem in Doha.